In all my years on the bench, I've seen many kinds of defendants walk through that door: nervous teens, hard-working parents, stubborn old-timers, even the occasional local politician trying to charm their way out of responsibility. But nothing, prepared me for the morning Alexandra Pierce swept into my courtroom as though she were arriving at a private luncheon instead of answering to the law. I remember the moment she entered as clearly as the echo of a gavel. The doors swung open, and there she was, tall, elegant, draped in a cream-colored designer coat worth more than some people's monthly wages. Her heels clicked sharply on the tile, each step a declaration that she believed the world should rearrange itself to accommodate her. A pair of oversized sunglasses hid half her face, though the other half revealed an expression I know all too well: boredom, entitlement, disdain, all mixed into one. She didn't look at the court officer. She didn't look at the clerk. She barely acknowledged the gallery. Instead, she lifted her phone, tapped the screen, and let out a soft, irritated sigh. "Ms. Pierce," the clerk called. She didn't answer, just kept scrolling. "Ma'am," the clerk repeated louder, "your case is being called." Alexandra finally looked up, slid her sunglasses to the top of her head, and replied, Yes, I heard you. I'm here." Her tone carried that peculiar sharpness reserved for people who've never been told no. She made her way to the defendant's table, but instead of sitting with any semblance of respect, she tossed her handbag onto the chair beside her and sat back with an exaggerated exhale. Her legs crossed, one hand casually twirling a strand of blonde hair, the other still gripping her phone. As the gallery murmured, I cleared my throat. "Miss Pierce," I said, "this is a courtroom. Please put the phone away." She didn't move. Not an inch. Instead, she smiled, a thin, mocking smile, and replied, "Judge, it'll just take a second. I'm confirming a meeting. This whole thing is already taking longer than it should." There are moments in a judge's life when the temperature of a room seems to shift. This was one of them. I kept my voice steady. "Your meeting can wait. The court cannot." She rolled her eyes. Then she said the words that will stay with me for a long time. "Honestly, Judge, if you people ran things more efficiently, I wouldn't have to be here at all." A collective inhale swept across the gallery, shock, disbelief, maybe even a hint of anger. One officer straightened. A mother clutching her toddler whispered, "My God." I felt something in me tighten. Not anger, experience. The kind that warns you when a case is about to turn complicated. "Ms. Pierce," I said firmly, "you will show respect in this courtroom. Put the phone down. Now." Instead of complying, she offered a smile so sweet it bordered on venom. "Or what?" she asked softly. "As far as I can tell, the only person inconvenienced here is me." In that moment, watching her sink deeper into her expensive coat, chin lifted in defiance, I realized something important, something I had not felt at the start of the morning. This was not just a routine case. Not just another hearing. Not just another entitled defendant. This was going to be one of the most dangerous cases I had ever handled, dangerous not because of the charges, but because of what unchecked arrogance can do when it collides with justice. When a defendant arrives in my courtroom dripping with arrogance, it's rarely without history. Entitlement doesn't appear overnight, it's cultivated, rehearsed, reinforced by a lifetime of being told the rules don't apply. And as I began reviewing the file in front of me, it became clear that Alexandra Pierce was no exception. The charges that brought her into my courtroom that morning were not minor. They involved a late-night incident just 3 weeks prior, on a narrow stretch of Elmwood Avenue, an area where families walk dogs, elderly residents cross at unmarked points, and delivery trucks stop frequently along the curb. It was there that Alexandra, driving a luxury SUV nearly the size of a small room, came around a bend far too fast. According to the police report, Officer Rivera was the first on scene. His handwriting, steady, economical, told its own story. A parked sedan had been struck with such force that it jumped the curb, shattering a low retaining wall. And sitting on that wall minutes before impact had been its owner, a retired Army medic named Harold Jennings, a man who had survived deployments overseas only to find himself limping away from a quiet night on his porch. Harold didn't appear in my courtroom often, but when he did, he always carried himself with humility, never seeking attention. That morning, he sat quietly in the second row, his cane resting across his lap, his eyes fixed on Alexandra. Not with hatred, just a kind of weary disbelief. Officer Rivera had described Alexandra as uncooperative from the moment of contact. Her words at the scene were recorded in his report. "It's just a car. He shouldn't have been sitting there. I can pay for it, call my assistant." Not once had she asked whether Harold was hurt. Not once had she apologized. When Rivera instructed her to stay seated, she ignored him and walked back to her vehicle. When he told her the damage meant the incident had to be formally documented, she scoffed. There had been another issue too, one Alexandra's attorney had hoped would quietly disappear, a prior citation from 4 months earlier. Another speeding complaint. Another near miss. Another moment where she had blamed the world instead of her own decisions. As I read through the supplemental statements, I saw a pattern forming, not just recklessness, but a belief that she was insulated from consequences. Harold's testimony was included in the case file as well. His handwriting shook slightly, but his words were steady. "I am grateful to be alive. If I had stood up even 1 second later, I believe I would not be here." He ended his statement with something that struck me deeply. "I don't want her money. I want her to understand what she almost took from me." It was a simple line, but it carried more weight than Alexandra's entire designer wardrobe. I looked up from the file and glanced toward her. She was still scrolling on her phone, lips pursed as though tasting something unpleasant. Her attorney, Mr. Langford, a polished man accustomed to smoothing the rough edges of privilege, sat beside her, looking as though he'd aged a decade in the last 5 minutes. "Your Honor," he whispered to me earlier, "my client is under a great deal of stress." A great deal of stress. Meanwhile, a veteran with 2 reconstructed knees and chronic pain from years of service sat in silence, gripping his cane with both hands. As the final page of the report passed beneath my fingertips, a realization settled over me like a slow, descending weight. This case was not simply about a speeding vehicle or property damage. It was about a profound imbalance, one that would need to be corrected not through punishment alone, but through understanding. And as I prepared to bring us back into open court, I sensed the first crack forming in Alexandra's perfectly constructed world. When we reconvened, the room had settled into that unmistakable courtroom stillness, the kind that arrives just before the truth begins peeling back the polished layers of someone's carefully crafted image. Alexandra sat at the defense table, legs crossed, shoulders draped in her designer coat as if she were posing for a magazine cover rather than answering to the law. Her lawyer, Mr. Langford, leaned toward her. "Please," he whispered, "just listen to the judge. Let me speak for you." She didn't respond. She simply lifted her chin and stared straight ahead, tapping her manicured fingernails rhythmically on the table. I began as I always do, with calm clarity. "Ms. Pierce, we're here today to address the charges relating to the incident on Elmwood Avenue. Before we move forward, I want to ensure you fully understand the seriousness of this matter." She didn't look up. "It's a car accident, Judge. People are acting like I committed a felony." That was the first spark. "You struck a parked vehicle with enough force to injure its owner," I replied evenly. "A man who served this country for 22 years. She waved her hand, as though brushing away a trivial inconvenience. "I already told the officer I would pay for all of that. Isn't that what matters? Why are we dragging this out?" I leaned forward slightly. "Compensation is not a substitute for responsibility." Her lips curled into a smirk. "With respect, Judge, responsibility is exactly what I'm taking. I offered to pay. Some people would appreciate that." A soft rumble went through the gallery, disbelief, disapproval, even indignation. Harold Jennings, sitting quietly in the second row, lowered his eyes. It wasn't money he wanted. It was understanding. Accountability. Humanity. Mr. Langford tried to intervene. "Your Honor, my client is simply saying." Alexandra interrupted him. "I'm saying what everyone's thinking, this entire process is a waste of time. I'm a busy person. I shouldn't have to sit here and be treated like a criminal when I've done everything possible to make this right." I let the silence settle before answering. "Ms. Pierce, making something right begins with acknowledging what happened. Not minimizing it." She scoffed. "Minimizing? Judge, I didn't run anyone over. The man is fine. He's sitting right there." She gestured sharply toward Harold without even glancing at him. For the first time that morning, Harold lifted his gaze directly to her. He didn't speak. His eyes alone spoke volumes. The room tightened. I watched Alexandra's posture, the stiff chin, the raised shoulders, the way she clung to her phone like a shield. And I recognized the defense mechanism for what it was, a lifetime of privilege convincing her that humility was a weakness. "Ms. Pierce," I said gently but firmly, "this court does not operate on your schedule. We do not calibrate justice based on wealth or convenience." Her eyes narrowed. "I pay more in taxes in 1 month than most people here do in a year. I think that earns at least a little consideration." There it was. The first real crack in her composure, and the first true insight into her worldview. I felt the gallery shift. Some leaned forward. Others whispered. I tapped my gavel lightly. "We will now review the evidence in open court." She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms defiantly, the smirk returning. "Fine. But I hope you're ready to see how exaggerated all of this is." Her confidence was unshaken. But what she didn't know, and what the court was about to witness, was that the evidence would do what her charm, her money, and her dismissiveness could not. Expose the truth beneath the polish. Officer Rivera stepped forward as the clerk dimmed the light slightly, the monitor glowing to life beside the bench. There's a particular weight in a courtroom when evidence, not opinion, not excuses, begins to speak. Video has no allegiance. It has no fear of wealth or status. It simply tells the truth. "Your Honor," Rivera said, "this is the dashcam footage from the night of the incident." Alexandra shifted, visibly annoyed. "This is unnecessary. We all know what happened." "We will let the footage speak for itself," I replied. The video began. Elmwood Avenue at night, quiet, dim streetlights casting long shadows over parked cars. A dog barked faintly in the distance. Everything calm. Ordinary. Then, suddenly, headlights appeared, far too fast for the narrow road. The SUV entered the frame, swerving slightly before slamming into Harold's parked sedan with a violent jolt. The gallery gasped. Even Alexandra blinked. The impact sent debris scattering. Harold, who had just stepped away from the retaining wall, flinched backward in the footage, nearly losing his balance. On the recording, Officer Rivera's voice came through as he approached the shaken veteran. "Sir, are you hurt?" Harold's voice, weak but steady, "Not sure, my leg." The video continued. Rivera crossed toward Alexandra's SUV, where she stood with her arms folded, impatience practically radiating off her. "Ma'am," Rivera said in the footage, "I need you to remain at the scene." Alexandra rolled her eyes dramatically. "Officer, it's a car door. He's fine. Let's move on." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Rivera continued, "You were driving well above the limit. We need to take a formal statement." Alexandra laughed, actually laughed. "I'm not sitting on the curb like some criminal. I already told you, I'll pay for everything. Why complicate this?" At the defense table, Alexandra crossed her legs defensively. "This is being blown way out of proportion," she muttered. Her lawyer lowered his head. I paused the footage. "Ms. Pierce, is this an accurate depiction of your statement? She shrugged. I was stressed. He startled me. The camera angle is unflattering. It was a remarkable moment, choosing vanity over responsibility. We will continue, I said. The next clip came from a nearby business's security camera. It showed Harold earlier that evening, calm, content, sitting on the low retaining wall with a cup of tea in hand. He stood up just moments before Alexandra's vehicle veered toward his car. 1 second later, he would have been crushed. The room went silent. Then Officer Rivera spoke again, this time offering context. Mr. Jennings told me he stood up because he heard a strange engine sound. He didn't know that sound might be the thing that saved his life. Alexandra shifted uncomfortably, her posture tightening. Your Honor, I said to myself internally, there it is. The moment the room sees. I turned to Harold. Mr. Jennings, if you wish to speak, you may. Harold rose slowly, leaning heavily on his cane. His voice trembled but didn't break. Judge. I've lived through explosions, collapses, ambushes, but I never expected danger to come from someone who couldn't even be bothered to slow down. He glanced at Alexandra, not with anger, but with disappointment. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for acknowledgement. I want her to understand that lives aren't replaceable, and that respect is not optional. Alexandra huffed softly. I do respect people. I'm just saying. The gallery reacted instantly, whispers, head shakes, disbelieving stares. Because at that moment, after all the evidence, after the footage, after Harold's words, it became clear that Alexandra still didn't understand. Still didn't feel the weight of what she'd done. Still believed she was the exception. The turning point had arrived. And the room felt it. There is a moment, in nearly every case involving unchecked entitlement, when the defendant's composure, polished, rehearsed, carefully maintained, finally breaks. Sometimes it comes quietly. Sometimes it arrives like a storm. With Alexandra Pierce, it came with the force of a lifetime of privilege colliding against a wall she didn't expect, accountability. The courtroom was still reverberating with Harold's quiet testimony when I turned back to Alexandra. Ms. Pierce, I said, you may respond. She rose slowly, her designer coat folding around her like a shield. Her chin lifted. Her posture stiffened. And in her eyes, something sparked, anger or fear, I could not yet tell. I don't understand why everyone is acting like I tried to kill him, she snapped. He's standing right there. He's fine. This is ridiculous. Her attorney flinched, whispering urgently, Alexandra, please. But she didn't hear him. Or maybe she chose not to. This entire thing is exaggerated, she continued, voice rising. A dented car and a startled man do not make me a monster. I've apologized. I've offered to pay. What else do these people want from me? A collective exhale spread through the gallery, part frustration, part disbelief. Officer Rivera shifted in his stance. Harold bowed his head. I tried to guide her gently. Ms. Pierce, no one is calling you a monster. But your actions. My actions, she interrupted, stepping forward. Let's talk about actions. I support more charities than anyone in this room. I employ hundreds of people. And I pay more in taxes than most people here will see in their lifetime. Doesn't that count for something? The word struck the room like a slap. Her attorney placed a hand on her arm. Alexandra, that's enough. She yanked her arm away. No, it's not enough. I'm tired of pretending this court has the right to judge me as if I'm some reckless teenager. I'm not one of these people who makes mistakes because they don't know any better. I know exactly what I'm doing. The irony of that statement hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I spoke evenly. Ms. Pierce, the law applies equally to all. She laughed. Hard. Sharp. Humorless. Judge, please. Let's not pretend this courtroom treats everyone the same. If I didn't have money, we wouldn't even be here. You'd give me a fine and send me on my way. That is not how justice works, I replied calm as ever. Oh, come on, she scoffed, waving an irritated hand. People like me don't answer to people like you. And there it was. The line that shifted the entire room. A sound escaped the gallery, soft gasps, a whispered, "Wow," the scrape of a chair as someone leaned back in disbelief. Even the court officers froze, their expressions tightening. Her attorney's face lost all color. "Your Honor," he stammered, "my client misspoke. She is under emotional strain." But Alexandra wasn't finished. "You want honesty?" she said, eyes blazing now. "Fine. I don't belong in this room. I don't belong being scolded like a child. I don't belong being lectured by people who don't live in my world. I have influence. I have connections. And I don't plan to sit here and let my future be decided by a man who has no idea what people like me deal with." Daniel winced. Harold closed his eyes. Officer Rivera's jaw tensed. And I, for the first time during the hearing, felt the weight of her words settle not just on me, but on everyone present. Because in that single outburst, she had revealed the truth more clearly than any video, statement, or report ever could. She didn't see this as justice. She saw it as an inconvenience beneath her. A place she believed she was above. I lifted my gavel slightly, not to strike it yet, but to signal what came next. The line had been crossed. And the lesson she had avoided her entire life was finally approaching. The courtroom was still vibrating with the aftershock of her declaration, "People like me don't answer to people like you." It was the kind of sentence that doesn't just echo, it reveals. Reveals the upbringing. The worldview. The entitlement so ingrained it feels like truth to the one who holds it. I let the silence stand for a moment. Silence, when used properly, is one of the most powerful tools in justice. It gives words the space to be seen for what they are. "Ms. Pierce," I said finally, "please sit down." She hesitated, then reluctantly sank into her chair, her lips pressed into a thin, irritated line. I folded my hands and leaned forward slightly, not in anger, but with the clarity and steadiness that had guided me through thousands of cases. My voice did not rise, because moral authority rarely needs volume. "Before I issue sentencing," I began, "I want to speak plainly." Alexandra looked away, staring at the wall as though the words were beneath her. "Every person who enters this courtroom," I continued, "comes from a different walk of life. Some come here in fear, some in frustration, and some in genuine need of guidance. But one principle is universal: respect. Respect for the law. Respect for the people harmed. Respect for the process that allows society to function." Harold sat quietly in the second row, listening with steady attention. "You have shown none of that today," I said. "Not to this court. Not to Officer Rivera. Not to Mr. Jennings. And not even to your own attorney, who has tried, against incredible difficulty, to help you navigate a situation you made far worse." Her jaw clenched. "Entitlement," I went on, "is not a shield. Wealth is not an eraser. Influence is not a substitute for responsibility. And most importantly, humility matters, especially in the moments where we have made mistakes." I paused, allowing the words to rest. "Therefore, the court imposes the following sentence." The gallery leaned in. "First, your driver's license is suspended for 6 months. Your speed and recklessness on a residential street endangered lives, and until you demonstrate respect for the rules of the road, you will not drive." She inhaled sharply. Losing control, that was her true fear. "Second, you will pay full restitution for the damages to Mr. Jennings' vehicle and for all medical evaluations required after the incident. These payments must come from your personal accounts, not trust funds, not assistance, not corporate cards." Her attorney nodded, already preparing to arrange it. Third, you will complete 20 hours of community service through the Providence Veterans Outreach Program. There, you will work alongside men and women who have served this country. You will listen to their stories. You will help them with tasks they can no longer do alone. And you will come to understand the weight of the life you nearly took. Alexandra's eyes widened with disbelief. You're making me work with. I raised a hand, stopping her before she could bury herself deeper. And finally, I continued, due to your behavior in this courtroom, your contemptuous statements, and your attempt to elevate yourself above both the victim and the process of justice, I impose a one-day contempt sentence, suspended on the condition of full compliance. Her attorney closed his eyes in relief. He knew how much worse it might have been. I concluded. Ms. Pierce, accountability is not humiliation. It is a moment of reflection. A chance to grow. I hope you take it. I lifted my gavel. This court is adjourned. The sound of the strike echoed through the room like a closing chapter, one she could no longer rewrite with money, charm, or indignation. Some cases end when the gavel falls. Others linger, echoing through hallways, whispered about by clerks and officers long after the courtroom empties. Alexandra Pierce's case was one of the latter. Not because of the charges, but because of the shift we all saw beginning in a woman who had spent her life believing the world bent to her will. In the weeks after sentencing, reports began to come in from the Veterans Outreach Program, the first being exactly what I expected. Arrived late. Minimal engagement. Appeared uncomfortable around participants. But the next set of notes, those surprised even me. Listened to veteran recount injury sustained in service. Assisted with sorting donations. Asked questions about mobility challenges. Transformation doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it begins in a quiet room, somewhere far from the walls of a courtroom, when arrogance has no audience. The most striking report came on her 5th visit. Ms. Pierce was asked to help Mr. Harold Jennings retrieve donated supplies from the storage area. She initially hesitated, but ultimately agreed. Harold had been volunteering at the center for years. A steady presence. A man who had known pain and perseverance long before Alexandra ever stepped into his life. The supervisor continued. During their task, Mr. Jennings dropped a box, and Ms. Pierce instinctively reached to help. They spoke for several minutes. Tension appeared to ease. A week later, another note. Ms. Pierce stayed after hours to continue organizing supplies. No complaints. But the biggest surprise came not in a report, but in the form of a letter delivered to my chambers. The envelope was familiar, elegant stationery, embossed initials, AP. Inside, a handwritten note. Judge Caprio. I've spent most of my life believing that respect was something I could demand, not something I needed to earn. I don't think I realized how deeply that mindset had taken hold until that day in your courtroom. She continued. Working with the veterans has shown me a kind of strength I've never known myself. It humbled me. It embarrassed me. And strangely, it helped me. Mr. Jennings and I spoke for a while. He deserved better than what I gave him that night. I have apologized to him personally. He accepted it with more grace than I ever offered him. I paused, rereading that line, he accepted it with more grace than I ever offered him. For the first time, her words felt human, not polished, not defensive, not wrapped in the silk of privilege. Later that month, I attended a community event for safe driving initiatives. I didn't expect to see her there. But as I walked through the crowd, I spotted her, buttoned in a simple jacket, hair pulled back, no designer accessories in sight. She was helping Harold carry a box of pamphlets. She stopped when she saw me, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. Judge, she said softly, hello. I nodded. Ms. Pierce. She hesitated, then stepped closer. I just wanted to thank you. I didn't understand, before. I do now. She glanced at Harold, who gave her a gentle, reassuring nod. And I'm trying. Truly. I studied her for a moment, searching for insincerity. I found none. Growth, I said, is not measured by where you stand, but by the direction you choose to walk. A faint smile touched her lips. Then I think I'm finally walking somewhere better. As she returned to help Harold, I felt a quiet sense of resolution settle over me. Some lessons are painful. Some are overdue. But when they take root, they remind us why justice exists, not merely to punish, but to awaken. And so I leave you with this. Nobody is above the law. Privilege without humility is dangerous. And respect, once lost, can still be earned. I'm Judge Caprio. And remember, justice isn't about your title, it's about your actions.